Let us continue with our STAAR PowerPoint. This, of course, is the Jarrett Chapter 10. This will be the STAAR PowerPoint over Jarrett Chapter 10. This will be Part 3. Let us begin. We have our learning objective for this particular little section we're going to cover. And the learning objective is what made the 20s roar. Things we need to look for: the automobile and other industries, automobile, airplane industries, for example. Number 2, more efficient production techniques. We're looking at how things improved, how we were able to mass produce things in this decade. Advertising and mass consumption for number 3. And then, of course, the stock market speculation. Those will be some of the things that we'll be looking at as we go through this section. Our first slide deals with the factors responsible for the prosperity of the 1920s. So we have the factors responsible for the prosperity. Number 1, we have laissez-faire economics, government hands-off, allowing businesses to do what businesses do. The second one, the rise of the automobile. As the automobile industry grew, so did other industries that were related to it, and we'll talk about that as we go. Other new industries. More and more of the country is becoming electrified, which meant that more and more of the new industries, for example, down here in the picture, the second from the right on the bottom, home appliances. Here we have a vacuum cleaner. Well, again, if your home is electrified, then you could own one of these time-saving, labor-saving devices. More efficient production techniques. And again, we're going to be looking at how we are able to mass produce these items, like the automobile right here, which then, of course, led to or helped produce mass consumption. Let's move on to the next slide. The rise of the automobile. Now, the automobile was invented, some would argue, in the 1880s. I mean, there are different versions. Many believe it was a Russian, not really relevant to us. What we're going to look at is how the automobile and the rise of the automobile here in America created an atmosphere of great prosperity. All right, the first bullet. The single most important factor behind the prosperity of the 1920s was the expanded use of the automobile. Here's a picture of one of the cars at that time. What that basically means is more and more people buy and drive automobiles. There are more and more jobs created to aid them in that. For example, down here, if you're going to be on the road for any given amount of time, if you're going to go in the country for a picnic, if you're going to go visit friends in a nearby town, you're going to have to stop probably somewhere along the way and get gasoline. And this is just one of the new industries that sprang up as a result of the growth of the automobile. Well, the convenience store. And of course, if you're going to sell gasoline, well, people get hungry, they got to go to the bathroom. Those all evolve as the automobile becomes more and more prevalent. Cars greatly affected all aspects of American life as ownership rose from 8 to 24 million owners throughout the decade. Third bullet. By 1929, out of every 9 jobs was an auto-related business. That could be right here. It could be repairs of the car. It could be in the construction of roads. As we saw in the video a couple of days ago, billions and billions of dollars were spent in paving roads across the country. It could be in the signs that are being used, stop signs, those types of things. It could be radio. I mean, the radio and the automobile go together like salt and pepper, peanut butter and jelly. And so a number of jobs were created, invented as a result of the radio being in the car. And our last bullet, it also stimulated other industries like the oil industry, of course, oil. You need oil to help the car, to lubricate the moving parts. You need oil, of course, because oil can be produced into gasoline, which the cars ran on gasoline. Again, go back to this picture. The steel industry, the glass, the rubber industry, all of those together, oil, steel, glass, and rubber, were necessary for the car to function, to build the car. Just looking at this picture right here, we have the rubber right there in the tire, glass right here in the windshield. We have steel, of course. Well, the whole body's made out of steel, and of course you can't really see it here, but oil, gasoline is necessary, required to run the automobile. Let's move on to our next slide. The rise of the automobile. We continue that previous slide. Again, previous slide, the rise of the automobile. Cars gave people mobility. They were able to move from place to place. I don't mean just from home to work or vice versa. I mean, it gave them a chance to go on vacations or to visit relatives, something that they may have not been able to do, something they may not have been able to accomplish more as often as they could once they had a car. Even people who live 300, 400, 500 miles away, even longer distances, you can now see them more frequently because of the mobility that the automobile provided. People moved out of the inner cities, some of the larger cities like New York, for example. They could now move to what we refer to as the suburbs. And we'll talk about the suburbs in a great deal more depth down the road in future chapters. But people are able to move out of the city into smaller towns around the big city, and they commute into town to work. School buses allowed rural students to attend school more regularly, or even just to attend school regularly for the first time. If you live 5, 10, 20 miles outside of town, which is almost impossible to travel on foot or even horseback on a daily basis, a school bus could do that. For example, we have a picture of one down here. So the bus could run out and pick you up, bring you into town, and then take you back home at the end of the day. And then finally, our last bullet, rural people were no longer as isolated as they had been before, thanks to the ability to, as you can see here, travel in isolated areas. All right. Our next slide, we'll take a look at Henry Ford. And here is a picture of Mr. Ford right in there in his Model T. All right, let's get that out of there. Actually, I think this is probably more appropriate. There we go. Americans had a love affair with Henry Ford's Model T. All right, get back to this. Henry Ford didn't invent the car, but he did perfect a way to make them cheaper and faster, to make them cheaper and to make them faster so more people could afford a car. And as I think we've seen in a previous video, by 1924, I believe it was, that, we got on a third bullet. In 1924, it's in this one as well. Ford was producing one car every 10 seconds, and he was able to sell them at $300 a car. I think we had that in our vocabulary terms as well. The assembly line was the method by which he was able to do this. The assembly line is something, again, we have seen previously, we have discussed, and there's a picture of that down here. The assembly line allowed the car manufacturer, in this case Ford, to mass produce cars, which again gives us a new car every 10 seconds. He was able to train people to do a certain job, and again you can see right here in this picture, got a young man working on a car. The car comes in on a moving conveyor belt. He does what he does while at his station, and then once he's finished, the car moves on. And the next car shows up, he does what he does in that car, he finishes, the car moves on. Through this process of individual work, everybody did something, specialization of labor, everybody did a certain thing. Through that, in interchangeable parts and the assembly line, they could mass produce cars by the millions, which of course is what made them so inexpensive. He increased workers' wages, kind of an odd thing at this time, but increased worker wages so the worker could afford to buy a car and other goods that were being mass produced. Ford really started the modern corporation as we know it today, and by paying his workers a higher wage than other people, competition, he was able to ensure that he would get and keep good workers, which of course is what every company wants. And since they were making enough money, they can now buy a car, for example, his at $300 a car, and they could then buy other things that were being produced by other people, whether it be radios or vacuum cleaners or refrigerators, doesn't really matter. The rise of other industries, the rise of new industries, I guess is probably the way to phrase it. New industries And we'll take a look at a couple of them. Here we have a picture in the upper right-hand corner. General Electric, the gas that wouldn't work does. Okay, light bulb. Down here we have an old-fashioned radio. And these are just two of the new industries that rose during this period of time, which of course saw mass production of their goods, people buying their goods on credit, and a continued growth of the economy. The 1920s saw new discoveries and inventions in almost every field, opening the way for many new businesses. Inventions, like there or there, made improvements in transmitting electricity to homes, businesses, and factories. So we were able to, thanks to innovations and inventions, send electricity to homes, businesses, and factories. So now these homes, businesses, and factories, could operate essentially 24/7. Prior to this, factories were fueled by steam power, and of course steam was created through either hydroelectric means, hydroelectricity. You had to have a factory near a source of running water, and that would create electricity, or you'd have to burn coal, or wood, probably coal, to create the steam that would then create the electricity. Now, those factories don't have to do that. The electricity is brought into them, and they don't have to worry about producing electricity themselves, which of course makes them more efficient. New household appliances like the vacuum cleaner, refrigerators, toasters, coffee makers, stoves, radios, and motion pictures made life easier, but really, well, easy, for the woman, the homemaker. The vacuum cleaner and the refrigerator, toasters, coffee makers, stoves, that made life a lot easier. But in many cases, particularly when it comes to the motion picture, it made life far more fun. The radio made life more enjoyable. The light bulb made life more enjoyable because now you could do things at home. You could sit at home with your family and listen to any number of kinds of shows, music shows, and entertainment shows, mysteries and comedies. And of course, with the light bulb in your house being electrified, you don't have to worry about, in this case, the young lady right there holding a candle. You don't have to do that anymore. Flip a switch, boom. You have electricity, you have light. And of course, that electricity was used to power the vacuum cleaners your mother used to clean, the refrigerators, which she used to keep your food cold in, fresh in, toasters, to make toast, coffee makers, stoves to now cook your food more efficiently, more quickly, and of course, radios, boom, right here again, for entertainment. A lot of things happening industrially speaking, industrial growth, the new industries, new innovations, new inventions were popping up, which made life easier and more fun. All right, the first flights. Go back and take a little bit of a look at this. Now, we have already discussed in several chapters ago the use of the the plane in World War I. We're going to talk a little bit about how it came to be. And here we have a picture of the Wright brothers flying their first airplane at Kitty Hawk. And here we have the Wright brothers. 1902, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, became the first to fly. And there is a picture of it right there. Glenn Curtiss, 1908, 6 years later, designed a seaplane that could take off and land on water. And here's a picture of that. Curtiss eventually flew his hydro aerial plane and marked the birth of naval, U.S. Navy aviation. From this, eventually we get the giant, massive aircraft carriers of today. So, the first flights, the top picture there of the Wright brothers, the bottom one of Glenn Curtiss, expanded our world. If the automobile made it easier to go from place to place, the plane made it much more so. Now, of course, that's still a few decades away from what we're looking at here in 1902 or 1908, but it is on its way. More efficient production techniques. And we're going to go back and take a little bit of a look at some things we've already talked about. Here's an example of the assembly line. So our first bullet, New manufacturing techniques, such as the assembly line, led to improved efficiency. The ability for workers, and you have 3 workers shown in this little picture here, the ability to do what they do quickly and efficiently, that specialization of labor. These guys right here are putting the tires on this particular car, and that's all they did. I can actually they may have done something else, but again, let's say that's their main job. So the tires are lowered to them, and you can see them being lowered in that manner. They're put on, and they do it quickly, they do it efficiently, and then the car moves on to the next station where then the next thing is done. As soon as the car in front of them leaves, here comes another one to do the same thing. And because they do it again and again and again, they get very good at it, they're very quick at it, they get very fast at it, and they're able to mass produce cars 1 every 10 seconds. As efficiency increased, consumers benefited from lower prices. Supply and demand. As supply of a good goes up, whether it be cars, donuts, it doesn't matter what it is. As the supply goes up, prices tend to fall. That is how Henry Ford was able to sell his cars, his Model T in 1924, for $300 each. An unintended consequence of the improved efficiency was skilled workers, and that is an important term, an important phrase in this. Skilled workers were no longer needed, leading to an increase of unemployment for who? Skilled workers. Now, I don't want to take anything from these 3 guys right over here, but that's hardly skilled labor. And I think I've defined skilled labor for you previously. Today's skilled laborers would be people who are well educated, doctors, lawyers. That's skilled labor. Flipping burgers at McDonald's, that's not skilled labor. Designing a new engine for the Model T, that's skilled labor. Designing better tires so the car gets better mileage or better traction, that's skilled labor. Installing that tire is not skilled labor. So what happened? Ford and all the others who were mass producing these goods let go of their skilled workers, brought in less skilled, less educated workers who were taught how to do what they did. And again, we have an example of a guy putting on a tire right there. Doesn't take a lot of training, probably. And unfortunately, skilled labor was becoming less and less necessary, so there was an increase in unemployment, particularly in that area. The age of mass consumption. Now, mass consumption is consuming things in large quantities. Here we have a couple of examples. Down here at the bottom we have a really nice looking automobile. And then of course up here we have chewing gum. This came about through a number of methods. Okay, our first bullet. Production techniques changed, and so did patterns of consumption. Patterns of consumption. As the production techniques changed, so did our patterns of consuming those goods being produced. Our second bullet. Goods began to be mass marketed at a national level, which I think we saw in the video I showed you a couple of days ago. Some examples of that mass marketing. Today, you turn on the TV and you'll see commercials, and that is an example of this mass marketing at a national level. Of course, there is some local stuff. If you have local channels, oftentimes the advertisements for local businesses, but by and large, a huge amount, what percentage, I can't really tell you, but a huge percentage of the goods being pushed, being sold, being advertised on commercials were and are at a national level. McDonald's, Burger King, clean that up there a little bit, Ford cars, Ribby's chewing gum. You can find them all over the place. Now, of course, McDonald's is more of a regional thing. I'm sorry, Whataburger is more of a regional thing. McDonald's is national. Any number of restaurants and automobile companies, chewing gum, Those are all national goods. So as we began to mass produce, we began to mass market at a national level. Advertising stimulated demand. People began to see what is out there through this mass marketing. Now, originally it was in newspapers and magazines, and then eventually in the radio, and then eventually, of course, on TV, and now, of course, it's on the internet. You're watching this video on YouTube, or you can watch this video on YouTube. You go to other YouTube channels, and they have short little advertisements before the video begins. You want to watch Miley Cyrus swing around a wrecking ball, or Justin Bieber be, oh my God, help us all, Justin Bieber, oftentimes before their music, and I use the term lightly, music videos began, there's an advertisement for whatever, it doesn't really matter, okay? So the way in which we mass market these goods has changed dramatically over the course of the last decade or so. Why? Well, because of the internet. And the mass marketing of goods back in the 1920s changed. Why? Well, because of the invention and the spread of the radio, for example. Our next last bullet. Workers were receiving higher wages. Again, Henry Ford started this. He paid them more, so one, they could afford to buy a car, probably a Ford, and number two, they could then buy other goods, which stimulated the economy. And if other companies were making lots of money, not car companies, but other companies, then they would come buy his car. So a strong economy helps Henry Ford sell cars. It just makes sense. If Wrigley Brothers is selling lots of gum and they have lots of employees, they're making lots of money, what can they afford to buy? Well, they go out and buy cars. It's just the way it works. So anyway, workers were receiving higher wages than ever before. They had more money to spend. They had more money than ever before to spend. And they also had more leisure time. Why? Because of the invention of the 8-hour day and the 5-day work week. Also put in place by Henry Ford, I believe. So we're looking at many Americans, not all. Not all. The farmers are still having problems. That's been mentioned previously, and we'll get into greater depth with that later. But many Americans, more than ever before, were working. They were making more in wages, more money than ever before. They had more money to spend and more leisure time because they're making more money per hour. They're working fewer hours. They got more free time. They got more money in their pocket, and they're looking at how to spend it. The more money a person made, the more things they wanted to buy. It makes sense. We're like that today. That is our society of mass consumption. Now, again, I think it's a good thing. There may be people out there, probably some of the teachers on this campus, and definitely some of the teachers that you will find when you go to college who think that's a bad thing, but I don't. I think it's a good thing. Let's continue. We have a couple more slides and we finish this little section. We're already pushing the boundaries of time. We'll continue with the age of mass consumption. Consumers are buying for the first time on credit. Walk in to a store, buy a car, buy some big ticket item. Of course, we're not talking about a pack of gum, but a washing machine, a vacuum cleaner, a refrigerator, and you would buy it on the installment plan. We had yet to begin with Visa, MasterCard, and other credit cards. And so what you would do is you would buy it on an installment plan. You would make, let's say we're going to buy a car, okay, and here's an advertisement for General Motors. You'd walk in, make a small down payment, drive the item home, in this case with the car, drive it home, or if it's a vacuum cleaner, you take it home with you, and then pay a little each month. So thanks to the installment plan and buying on credit, more and more Americans were now able to buy big ticket items like cars. Here's an advertisement down here at the bottom. 0 interest down and payments for 90 days on all elephants. You want to buy an elephant? Who doesn't want an elephant? They're so cute. So elephonic. Anyway, you can buy an elephant. 0 down, interest and payments for 90 days. Unfortunately, there is an unintended consequence here. Americans were now in debt. Before this period of time, if you couldn't afford to buy something, you have the cash in your hand, you didn't buy it. You waited until you saved up enough money. with the new age of mass consumption, with the ability to buy on credit, paying an installment plan. People are now buying more and more, paying a little bit per month, and Americans were now in debt unlike they ever had been before. The speculation boom. You know what? We're going to have to stop it here. We're already about 25 minutes, and we're going to stop it here. Once again, we're going to finish it. This is the STAAR PowerPoint over Chapter 10, and this has been Part 3. We're going to finish it here. We'll start with the speculation boom with our next video.